Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ritual of Wild. I'm so honored to share this space with you today. My guest is someone whose work has deeply moved me, not only for his insights, but for the tenderness and courage that it invites. David Bedrick is a teacher, counselor, attorney, and the founder of the Santa Fe Institute for Shame-Based Studies. His path has been shaped by early experiences of violence and gaslighting within his family. Realities that ignited a lifelong devotion to understanding the roots of shame and how we might lovingly unshame ourselves and one another. David is the author of several powerful books, including Talking Back to Dr. Phil, Revisioning Activism, and You Can't Judge a Body by Its Cover, a soulful collection of 17 women's stories around hunger, body shame, and redemption. His newest work, The UnShaming Way, released in late 2024. It continues this brave and compassionate inquiry into the ways we carry, confront, and heal shame in our lives. Through his teaching, writing, and training of therapists, coaches, and healers, David invites us to dialogue that is honest, liberatory, and deeply human. This conversation is one of depth, story, and possibility. In this conversation, David and I explored some of his own experiences through his work, personal experiences through which his heart was just broken wide open. And in the reflecting of that, so too was mine. David, if you're listening, I so deeply appreciate the way you held space and witnessed my own emotions surface through the exchange of our conversation. David's work is such a beautiful light in the world, and I invite you to listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being, with your open heart and deep presence. Without further ado, here is our conversation. David, welcome to Ritual of Wild. I am so hand over heart honored to have you here. I'm very nervous just naming that. I'm not sure why, because normally I can navigate these conversations really well, and they typically do come with nerves, but I have extra today, and I don't know if it's the amplification of the full moon that we're expecting on Friday, or if it's your deep, beautiful work that touches me in very tender emotional places, which is what I sort of want to unpack here. I would love to start off with a beautiful quote that I came across. And I'm not sure when I found this, but it's something you said that says, when you're aligned with your heart's path, even your mistakes are just right. Which really feels like a nice hug as we open into this with my nerves.
Yeah, it's an important thing because it's not that our mistakes are not sometimes consequential. Of course they are. If I mistreat you, it's consequential. And then it matters to me. Then I want to repair the damage. But when people are too much focused on, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Am I getting it right? And I'm getting it wrong. Then they're orienting towards trying to present a part of themselves as opposed to being themselves. And once a person is like themselves, there's a kind of quote unquote perfection in that, given that there's all mistakes in it. I'm a not fully formed, not fully healed human being. So if we get into a relationship, you'll see some of my stuff and I'll make mistakes and I'll treat you in ways that are connected to my story. But that's part of the human drama. And to me, the best we can do with that is to show up as ourselves and then learn as we go, as opposed to try to perfect ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. And even as you say that, I could feel just a exhale in my body and a relaxation of the tension I initially came with. And before we hit record, you asked me, what could I do to support your nervousness? And I said, just please accept my whole humanity. And you so beautifully blessed that before we entered. And I just want to preface the community with how I found your work, because you are an attorney and a teacher and a counselor. You've written 4 powerful books, and the most recent one, The UnShaming Way. And the way I came across David's work was you had done a post or shared a post about the wellness world and how there tends to be an oppression and a suppressing of our feelings. We tend to pathologize them. This really spoke with me from the lens of my own experience, because I have been in the seat of some therapists, and I know this is nuanced because there's all different sorts of backgrounds and different lineages through which it's taught, but I remember feeling specifically like I feel like I'm just a textbook. Like I feel like you're just treating me as if like there's
Mm,
this diagnostic containment I come with and I check all the boxes and now I'm like this robot and you're reading me like that. The human part of me could not connect with her despite all the accolades I could see on her wall. So I'm
mm,
wondering, in your 35 years or more of experience with the lens of all the background you come from and
mm.
the current work you do now, how have you seen this so alive in the wellness world? And what could we do to begin to change it?
Yeah. I mean, psychology has taken its marching orders from medicine. It's not that we're practicing medicine, but what I mean by marching orders is when something bothers you, you have a stomach ache, you get a headache, you got a lump somewhere, you get a fever, right? You go into the medical world and they say, let's do this. Did it get better? And if it got better, the lump went away and the headache went away and the fever went down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So psychology enters the world in that paradigm of healing. Making a symptom go away is healing.
Mm-hmm.
But the psychological world is not exactly like that. We don't make your anger go away. We get to know it. We let it do its dance. We find out where it belongs, how it empowers you. We make it part of you. We don't take it
Mm-hmm.
away from you. We make it part of you. Otherwise, we're taking you away from you. So
Mm-hmm.
you still need to learn to deal with it, with energies like that and feelings like that. It doesn't mean go ahead, rip people apart, who cares? But it does mean this is an aspect of you. We don't get rid of you. We don't heal you by getting rid of you. We heal you by you becoming more whole.
So I'm curious for you and your work, have you noticed, to circle back to the initial quote that I shared about when you're aligned with your heart, how do you work with someone who doesn't know how to do that because maybe an aspect of themselves in connecting with their heart was to use their voice as a sacred form of expression and they were told to be quiet or you're being too much? How might we integrate that from the lens of your work?
Thank you. I love that question because it involves a couple of things. One, if somebody has a voice as part of their gift and their life path is to express that, and they're being told to be quiet or being censored, then when you think about two levels, one, I think about the social level. Then I
Mm-hmm.
would say, is that quiet, censoredness because of your gender, because of your skin color? Because I want to know that also, because then it touches me even to say that. I get chills
Yeah.
because then it's not an individual issue only.
Yes.
It's a collective issue as part of people who you have some solidarity with. In
Yeah.
that case, part of the healing is to make sure you know that story. So it's not just me telling you as Jenny, you should be quiet. It's somebody telling you as the kind of person and the identity you have to be quiet. Then you want to make sure you have connection with people who understand from the bones and skin and gender of you what that's like. I can empathize, but I don't have that particular flavor of be quiet. Does that make
Right.
sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It makes me think of a quote by
Mhm.
Gabor Mate where he says, before our mind creates the world, first the world creates our mind.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah. And just how
Mhm.
many examples have we seen of this where we will condescend or criticize or pigeonhole someone that is doing something wrong in society, and yet we forget to like take a wider perspective of the environmental aspects, the way they grew up or what's happening on the inside, you know?
Yes. It's so important because of, again, the wellness psychology industry is so individual focused. That's David's problem. That's Jenny's problem. But
Right.
it may not be only Jenny's problem. It could be a collective social identity's difficulty. And if can you follow? And then if it's a woman of color's identity, then it's also a white male problem. Can you
Yeah.
follow? Necessarily, because that's because that identity, a woman of color's identity, is in relationship to an identity that marginalizes it. So now we're deepening and broadening the understanding. So it's not Jenny's problem. It's my problem too, as a more or less white male, and how I talk to you. I'm not saying I'm screwed up or I'm bad. I'm saying I'm part of the healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is so, so powerful because I feel like when we are on that journey of healing, whatever that means to anyone that's listening to this, is there tends to be this overarching notion of individuation. It's my problem. I'm what's wrong. It's me. And we forget to notice how there are fundamental layers that have weaved us to that moment in time. And it's not to say to take off our ability to respond to what's happening, but also to say, like, it's not just a you problem. So I just wanted
Yeah.
to echo what you were saying, because I think
Yeah.
that really matters.
Yeah. Because that what we're saying, that voice that says be quiet, or you talk too much, or you've taken up too much space, or that's loud enough, David or Jenny, that's a kind of an internalized depression on the social issue, right? So
Yeah.
social identity. And then we're also saying, then we have to help that person identify the two things you're talking about. What would my voice be like if it was not oppressed? I'm not saying do it and get into trouble, but you got to know. You have to get to know it. What song would it sing? What
Mhm.
gratingness, what whispering, what hurt, what ferocity would it show if it wasn't oppressed? Don't do it everywhere until you know how safety and how to manage that. But you have to hear it. Your own ears need to know the sound of your voice, and maybe some safe places for that voice. And then you have to know what you're up against. What will happen? Is it an internalized oppression and it's an inner voice? Is it you'll lose your job and you can't afford to pay for the food for your kid? Like, we have to know something about that cost that you're in the middle of and the consequence. And then how do we help you navigate that life, given there's a voice that wants to grow, and that's going to become part of your wellness to grow that expression. And then there's things you're up against that we have to take seriously and help you navigate.
Yeah. And I just want to name that every time I watch you speak, and even now, I can feel the palpable devotion that comes through in the way you speak. And I just
Thank
so
you.
deeply appreciate that. And as someone that's on the other side of your words, it just helps me feel more connected with you. So I just want to thank you for that.
That's so touching, Jenny. I'm so glad you said that. That makes me teary. Sometimes, like, I like my intelligence and I like my ability to think and study and like things like shame, like for 35 years. But then every so often somebody does exactly what you did. Sometimes I'll teach and I'll think that was the coolest idea, really brilliant thinking. And then I get feedback from people and they'll say, when you talked about this, I cried.
Yeah.
And I
You're
think,
Sarah.
yeah, and I think part of me is thinking I said the really smart thing. That's good, and I'm not against that. I like being
Yeah.
smart, and I have a good brain. That's a gift. But what the person received wasn't necessarily this brilliant idea. They received something else that touched them on a feeling level. And so you're reminding me of
Mhm.
the feeling quality of the way we communicate and elder and educate each other. That's not only about how we think, but how we feel and communicate to each other. That's very touching to me. Thank you.
Yeah, and something that I really love about your work and the work of the journey that I've been in, I'm a student of somatic therapy. And so that's
Mm,
also how, because I've seen you intersect with Sigourney Bell's Soma
mhm,
Mystica. So I know you teach there. And just the way you present how feeling can truly be a bridge of intimacy. And one way that I've heard this in the past is intimacy. Beyond what we think intimacy is, there's a whole innerscape that's happening, and it usually is nothing like what we
mhm,
see in society or on the movies. And it can really give us a skewed lens of how to relate with each other, let alone ourselves. And I
mhm.
know that you and your partner, Lisa, have created a beautiful journey container offering of this. And I'm not sure if it's still running, but it's the relationship supplement, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And I'd love to know for you how that has impacted your experience of being in relationship with Lisa or in people in general. Because for me, I feel like to be in relationship is not something I take lightly in this season of my life. I really feel like it's a sacred stewardship in which
Mm.
there is a potential for, it might sound wild, but maybe you have to be a bit out of your mind to believe this, but just like evolutionary change.
Yeah, that's very touching to me. Yeah, we have a relatively undeveloped relationship skill culture. And what I mean by that is we have so much technology that builds and then more and more individual stuff, which is good. I know about my trauma, I know about my nervous system, and things like that are growing, which is great intelligence being offered to people. But how we interact with another person, what do we do when we don't get along? What do we do when we violently disagree other than yell at each other and kill each other, right? What do
Yeah.
we those the world needs to know that. We don't know what to do nation to nation, group to group, and then in relationship with each other. How do we relate to another person, build relationships, especially across differences, social differences, opinion differences? If I think one thing about the Middle East and you think another.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to get along. We could disagree with each other. I'm not saying be nice, everybody, but we can disagree. But do we have to shut the other person down so that you don't exist?
Right.
And if you don't exist, okay, maybe I get to express my voice, and that could be very important. But we haven't built a bridge. Again, I'm not being Pollyanna. Can't we just, Jenny, let's go figure out what we agree on, even though children are dying? I'm not saying that. But if I can't see you as a human being, maybe a tiny bit of you in me. And if you can't see me as a human being, maybe a tiny bit of me in you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we resolve any of the bigger problems. But in the relationship space, there's very little relational work. Most of the relationship work is if I could get over my stuff and you can get over your stuff, we'd get along better, which is great. But I'm not all the way over my stuff and you're not all the way over stuff. So now what do we do?
Yeah, it makes me think of the power of like if we were to approach each other with more curiosity and wonder and actually engage with what is on the surface and beneath it, then we wouldn't feel like we need to extract all the time. I just feel like our world is in a place where we're on this threshold. There's one foot in the door of like, what can we get from one another? And then there are people that are awake to like, how can we engage and make change? How can we think local instead of global if that feels too big right now?
Yeah.
And I just feel like what you and Lisa created is such a beautiful, imperfect way an approach in which we can bring all those layers of ourself and unpack it together because no one really knows what the F we're doing,
Yeah.
you know?
Relationship. I was just looking up something today. One of my favorite poets, a German poet, Rainier Maria Rilke. I'm not sure how you say his name. I never heard people say it. Rilke. He wrote was it in the 30s? No, I'm not remembering. Something was around there. I mean, 1920, like 100 years ago. And he said something like, I won't remember the quote, it's something like, relationship is the work for which all other work is meant for. It's the most difficult thing. Now that I know about my psychology a little bit, somewhat, maybe more or less, now that you know certain things about this, now can we have a relationship, that has some integrity, that builds, that makes intimacy out of our differences, especially? Can we bridge those gaps? Oh my gosh, we come from different worlds, just walking in our bodies down the planet, right? And that's not easy for us to get along in that deep.
It's so true. And I'd love to deepen into something we touched on at the start because it's in the back of my mind. When you spoke to Western psychology and how it suppresses feelings, from your experience, could you explain to listeners and to myself, where does that background come from? Like, why has that come to be where it's so much an exploration of the mind and we forget to include the body? There's this huge override, and which is why I love somatics and what it speaks to, because 80% of that information is being communicated from the body, but we don't know how to hear it.
Yeah. I'm not sure where it all comes from. There's certainly a patriarchal and Western scientific bias that's in there that's not body oriented. And I'm thinking about Descartes, who said, I think, therefore I am. And that was part of a understanding. I think. I exist because I think. He didn't say I exist because I feel. I exist because I'm sentient. I exist because I'm looking out through eyes that are sensing another being. I exist because there's a spirit that lives inside of me that animates me. He said, makes me and I am is a thinking. And that's not just Descartes, but so there's a whole orientation for hundreds of years that has that orientation. And then looks at feeling as a lesser function. So then Western psychology, starting in Europe, then started looking at women as being lesser because I'm a male and I'm a thinking guy, and you're a woman. I'm exaggerating this. I'm not saying this is true, right? You're a woman. You might be more of a feeling thing, and that could, let's say that's true some of the time. Although you could be a thinking person, I can be a feeling person. But if that's true, and you think thinking is a higher level functioning, and feeling gets in the way of thinking, well, if you were not being so upset, you'd be thinking clearly, Jenny. Can you follow? Then we get rid of your feelings so you can think better. So that whole pattern has gone on. And the opposite of that is, if you could be more in touch with your feelings, you'd be clearer. Some people say, get your feelings out of the way, and then you'll be clear about what needs to happen. But I could say, if you were more in touch with your feelings, we could resolve more of these difficulties.
Right.
That's not being said, right? We can think through the big conflicts in the world. this is the ideas, this is my opinions. But we may never resolve it that way. We might have to
Mhm.
feel, oh my gosh, what's happening to you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm thinking about a woman that I had a beautiful dialogue with. I have a Jewish background, and she was a Palestinian activist. And we had
Mm.
some bumping online about our opinions, and we decided to have a separate call.
Wow.
And so we didn't have everybody watching and whatever telling each of us whether we were doing it right or wrong. Two things were really moving. One, on her arm, she had written in pen ink a name of a child.
Hmm.
And I said, "What's written on your arm?" And she said, "This is to represent something." Because this makes me cry, because there are parents who have to write the names of their children on the children's limbs,
Hmm.
because I just want to trigger everybody, because they may get blown apart. And then how do I identify them? I have to look, isn't it agony? So she's
Hmm.
telling me this. Now I'm no longer thinking about what's the opinion, who should do what war should we stop, should we do it? Who's right, who's wrong. She's brought me into a feeling world. And I
Hmm.
couldn't help but get my heart broken. And she's seeing my heart broken. Her heart's broken. Now we're making a human connection. I'm not saying what's right or wrong, who should do what, who started it, what happened in 1948, what happened in October. We're making a feeling connection between the two of us. So that was so profound. And then the other thing was, I have spent time in Israel. She lived in parts of Israel as a Palestinian, and she wasn't freely allowed to walk. Oh, I'm seeing your feelings. I don't want to. Sorry, I'm going on, but I'm
It's okay. I want to
yeah,
hear this. I
yeah.
appreciate it.
No, thanks for slow down and care for your feelings and my feelings. Yeah, I
Hmm.
remember her showing me that. If that can't break my heart, and I can't drop my who's right and who's wrong and what happened on what dates to feel for a moment, how are we ever going to solve the problem?
Yeah.
We have to drop the right and wrong for at least a moment and say, oh my gosh, parents are doing that on their children's arms.
Yeah.
Like that, let it in, David. It's okay. This is not threatening your opinions.
Hmm.
This is a moment of connecting about something. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just want to speak to that before you share the second thing, because I really want to hear the second thing.
Yeah.
Is that earlier when you were sharing, you used an example of like, if you're from Palestine and I'm from Israel and we don't like go the feeling bridge way or are able to listen to what's beneath. It's just, as a mother, I just felt like a huge lump in my throat that, this is happening.
Yeah.
I just feel like such grief.
So much grief.
So much grief. And to be honest, I don't even know how to speak to it. I see so many people protesting and speaking up on their feeds, and it could be very overwhelming. And
Hmm.
I have shame, since we're talking about shame, because I'm afraid. Like, I'm afraid of what I don't know. I'm afraid of, saying the wrong thing. And I'm sure lots of people can relate to this. But now I'm just thinking about the parents, regardless of the history of just like,
Yes.
you know?
Yeah.
So I'm just taking a moment to pause. To anyone listening,
Yeah.
thank you for being here. I know this is a intense conversation, and I honestly didn't expect
Hmm.
it to go here, but I had a feeling it would.
Hmm.
And David, just thank you for being the one to steward this with me, because honestly, I don't know how.
Don't Not knowing is so important around things that are intractable and seemingly
Mhm.
unresolvable. It's Then we have to, many of us who are going to take the next step, I think, are going to start by, I don't know how. And we've been trying for for 2 years, for 80 years, for 300 years, whenever you want to start this problem. We've been trying. So in that case, all the knowings in the world haven't been able to do it. I don't think today's knowings will do it. That we need to start by not knowing. I don't know what to do. And now we have to potentially feel with each other,
Yeah.
right? Because and not that people shouldn't be protesting. I'm so glad people are speaking up. Those voices need to be heard and they have impact. But where is the grief? Where are the people who just say, let's just weep together for a while? That would be
Yeah.
very beautiful and needed. And needed. Yeah.
It's so true. And that's what beautiful what you said, that like the all the knowing in the world doesn't know up to this point. So maybe we do begin by unknowing. And yeah, just thank you for making space for that. I just feel so welcomed here. So thank you.
Thanks.
If it feels good for you, I would love to hear the second insight you had from this powerful, sounds like powerful conversation you had with this person.
It was. I'm shy about this one, but I'm not too shy to say. Shy is the wrong word. I'm more timid because of the politics of things. But we're beyond. We're not only political at the moment. This is not about a political discussion. But I remember saying to her something that I don't know if I'd said this out loud anywhere other than to my wife, actually, Lisa.
Mm.
And I was in Israel a few years ago. I grew up in a violent home. I've told that story. My father used fists and belts, and it was really very difficult. I was scared most of the time growing up. And when I went to Israel, I spent I can't remember, it was 2-3 weeks on my own. And then I saw soldiers walking through the streets with military guns, automatic guns and military outfits and weapons. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to feel not so good to me. I don't really want people walking through the cafes with this kind of weaponry. And then I noticed this forbidden thing, Jenny. I noticed I felt a kind of a safety. Like, oh God, they're there for me in a way. And I think that's forbidden to say, but my body felt like somebody's protecting me. And I grew up not feeling protected. So I'm not sure they were literally, and not trying to support that philosophy, but that was really interesting. And then I thought, what do I do with that feeling of a kind of safety and at homeness that I felt in this place? And at homeness. And because people are like, well, is Zionism and these different political arguments. I want to push those political arguments away. I'm not trying to argue for or against Israel's politics. But the personal feeling thing was, I felt a little bit of home and safety walking down the street, feeling wise. That's not about what Israel should do.
Right.
Right. So I talked to this woman about the home thing, and she said when she comes back home, she lives in a Palestinian area of Israel, Arab area of Israel, she has to go through more checkpoints than I do as a Jewish American, even though that's her home, before they're going to let her in. So she says that I have a home and I'm not exactly allowed to go home. And we had this amazing conversation about what does home mean? Is it in your heart? How much is it a place? What makes you feel at home? It was such a beautiful, and again, we dropped beneath the whole political discussion, and we had this touching conversation about how do we feel at home? Do you feel at home in the world anywhere? Do I feel at home? Can I make you feel more at home right now?
Yeah.
And this was again, transcended the political argument, which is important. What are we going to do? What should Israel do? Who does that land belong to? Those things are real, And but how do we resolve those if we can't make contact with these things? What are you going to do about my feelings needing to feel at home? What are we going to do about your feelings about need to be at home? We can't discuss that only at a policy level because you need to feel some homeness and safeness. Of course you want to feel at home and safe. Of course I want to feel at home and safe. That's not a bad thing. What are we going to do with that problem? Because if we don't deal with the feeling problem, I need to feel some safety and homeness, and you do, then I'm going to fight for a piece of land that says it.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way I know how to say I deserve a sense of home and safety. And they're saying I deserve a home. And we do. But what are we going to do with that if we can't make a feeling understanding? I think we have to, then we just want to kill each other. Well, I have to kill you so I can have my home, or you have to kill me so you can have your home. That's not going to work out so well. Yeah.
On a micro, on a level, like on a fractal level, it's almost as if we're only seeing it from this place of the mind and the collection of stories and beliefs we've inherited as a result of our conditioning, or like the culture, or what the overculture is saying. And it's just so interesting when I'm hearing you say that, it just feels like a macrocosm of what happens on a micro level within our own relationships. Like, I'm thinking of all the examples I've had with my own children that are 2 and 4 that are like having a shit fit, and like moments where my capacity is so small, it's hard for me to see beyond it. But in all the moments where I've been able to look beyond it, there has always been a deeper resonance beneath that expression. And it was only in my willingness to first feel my frustration and be in dialogue with myself, in that, even if it's a few seconds, to help me connect with my child, and I
Mhm.
just I just think of, like, I don't know, what's coming to my mind is like we have so much work to do.
Yeah,
We have so much unlearning to do.
yeah, yeah. And what you're saying too, and what you're demonstrating and modeling so beautiful, and so much feeling to do.
So
And then
much.
people have to, like you're learning in your somatic learning. I was thinking the other day, it's not that people don't feel, don't know what they feel. They don't know how to feel,
Mhm.
literally. Because you ask people feeling questions and they tell you their thoughts. And you ask people feeling questions and they give you some labels of feeling words. But actually feeling, like what you're doing, taking a moment. Oh, I got the chills, as I said. Oh, I'm getting teary. Well, this brings up this thing for me about being a mother. These are the tears that live in me. Actually feeling, not getting rid of those, going around those. That's an amazing thing to do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes me give a lot of credit. It makes me want to give a lot of credit and compassion to us as humans because there's so much we are innately wired with that a lot of us, including myself, haven't even like touched the fullness of it yet. But I do get pieces of it the more I dive into this work. And it's like the
Mm-hmm.
way I think of this is, for example, my partner, who I love dearly, has this chronic pain in his heel. And on a physiological level, if you're an athlete, which he is, or if you're a human that likes to walk and use your legs and you have that privilege, you have to be able to land on your feet. And so I was speaking with him, and I'm just wondering, as he transitions through his own season of life and questioning like his career and what he really feels
Mm-hmm.
passionate about, but is afraid
That's
or
deep.
hesitant to bring out in the world, which I totally can understand, is can my ideas and inspirations and the trust through which this is coming from, can I trust that it will land on its feet if I
Mm-hmm.
commit to it? So I'm wondering, from your lens and experience as a counselor and therapist of this work somatically, how can we bridge how our body speaks to us sensations or in chronic symptoms to a doorway that allows us a deeper understanding of maybe what our mind isn't ready to look at yet?
Yeah, always. The body's always speaking, and one of the ways it speaks is in physical symptoms.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that you need to get sick to heal and all, but some people's bodies express themselves and their intelligence symptomatically.
Yeah.
And there's various components of shame to that. One is I can't do what I want to do. I can't be as productive because I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I can't run because I'm in pain. I can't be friendly and warm to you because I have so much pain I have to deal with. I don't have concentration left. So there's
Hmm.
one kind of difficulty that enters, which is I can't be the person who I want to be, who I think I should be, who the society wants me to be. I am smiling, energetic, productive, caring for their children, caring for their partner, being of service, working hard, smiling, happy human being. I'm not only that. So chronic symptoms threaten that persona.
Hmm.
In a difficult way, it's difficult to have that happen. I want to be able to be productive and smiling and happy and warm and caring for people.
Yeah.
On the good side is it rips that mask a bit off. It doesn't allow me to only be, these are my goals, these are my agendas. I'm going to push through no matter what. I'm going to be the kind of person who's more assimilated to a culture and those kinds of things. So then we have to take those symptoms and treat them as intelligent. So
Yeah.
the pain in the foot, we'd have to work with him to know. But pain itself is very rarely expressed. Pain itself is a marginalized voice. I'm really hurting today, Jenny. I'm in
Hmm.
so much pain. People almost never say that without, oh, let me make it better.
Right.
It's like,
Dr.
let's make
Google.
you go away so we can get back to being smiling and happy and getting things done and whatever. So pain itself, thinking about the Middle East, can we just scream, cry, weep, yell about how horrible? Can pain be expressed? Very rare. And
Mm.
then what is the symptom doing? If it's getting in the way of, I love your metaphor about landing on your feet, if it's getting in the way of the stepping, then it's changing the way a person moves,
Yeah.
right? Then if I would say, now I don't know about your partner at all, seriously, so I'm doing myself because I've had ankle problems and I broke a foot once. So this is not to say what he's going through, but then
Right.
I can't move through the world the same way. I
Yes.
have to move differently. I move with a limp. That's what was happening for me. And then I have to ask myself, do I show my limp in life? Am I always being together? Am I not showing the way that I can hardly move, my wounds, my traumas unresolved? those become questions. Is that part of the medicine I offer the people to say, me too, in this way? Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then how do I move? Do I move slower? Do I move with more intention? Do I move with more ability to deal with pain and keep going? I don't know. But those questions then come up around that if we treat the symptom as a kind of intelligence. Chronic symptoms and illnesses are some of the biggest diversity issue that's growing. It's not bigger than all the issues in the world, but it's the biggest growing group. Maybe it's because we're getting to know it more. I don't know how much more there is than always. Maybe it's the amount of people is growing, but it's more permissible. There's more space for that. And one thing that's always happening from the collective of that group is I can't only function in your world.
Mm-hmm.
Or done, happy, done, okay, selfless. I can't only operate in that world. This is not only the best world for me, and I have something to show you about
Mm-hmm.
slowing down, caring for yourself, taking more time with feeling. I have something to show. So there's teachings in that world that are phenomenal and super important. Yeah, it's a really important area.
That was such a powerful answer. Thank you for expressing and articulating it in a way that what I'm hearing is that tuning into that wisdom is actually a doorway. Whereas one that might be in the seat of that chronic pain might ask, what's wrong with me? And yet there's something so wise and right about what your body is showing you. Mind you, you may not be able to access it in that moment. And this is a both and story, which I also feel is an overarching invitation for humans and the way we interact. It's a both and. It can be the doorway once you have that capacity to lean more into who you are and why you are, and also inform a way through which you can further connect with others about slowing down,
Yes.
being resourced,
Yeah.
asking for support,
Yeah.
saying, I need help.
I love that. Huge. Saying you need help. I can't do it on my own. Huge.
Yeah.
And then, and as you're saying, whenever something gets looked at as an illness, whether that's my psychological illness because I'm too this or I'm not regulated or whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
physical, it's called physical illness, the body's symptoms, then we treat them, as I was saying at the beginning, allopathically. And then if I
Right.
have chronic symptoms, I try supplements, and then I try naturopaths, and then I try this kind of healing, and then I try somatic work, and I try this with the hopes that if I get it right, those symptoms will go away.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and then if it can, amen. If I would try things with you too, and in fact, I would hope that they would help relieve you of the suffering. And I happen to know that a lot of people that suffering doesn't go away.
Mm-hmm.
So now what am I going to do with that? Are they just screwed up? They didn't find the right supplement. They didn't come to me because I'm the better therapist than the person they went to. Am I just going to lay something on that person? You didn't get it right, etc. Keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. How am I going to open my heart to this person may have certain difficulties and a limp of a kind, a pain of a kind that they can't live the way some idealized version of a person. Do I throw them out because they can't heal? Do they throw
Right.
themselves out because they can't figure it out? Do they spend all their resources trying to make something happen that is not going to happen in this lifetime? What is the value of that person then? Are they just unfixable and I'm an unfixable broken person? Or do they have something to offer right in the middle of their difficulty? Are they a voice of the culture?
Yes.
Are they shamanic in their ability to see ahead of us where we're going? How does that person's life get enriched by who they are? Not minimizing the suffering. The suffering is real.
Yeah.
But if we can't see some of that, then the whole culture says, if you can't get better, we throw you away.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all failures, including you. I'm a failure
Mm-hmm.
as a healer, and you're a failure as a person who's supposed to get healed. And that's all we get to see.
Yeah.
That's not a good solution given there's going to be millions of people who, no matter what healing they get, that aren't going to have symptoms relieve, and millions of healers who aren't going to be able to relieve those symptoms. That's not the way that story goes for some people, for millions, actually.
Yeah. And so not sustainable when you
Mm-hmm.
look at it that way. I think about like, I was raised in an all girl Catholic school and it was highly academic. And if you weren't of the top tier performance in your grades, you were kind of not that important or you were kind of holding them back. At least that's the experience I felt. And that
Mm-hmm.
could be a me story as well. And yet I found that there wasn't such a place for celebrating things like deep creativity. It was so very limited and just very highly academic. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just feel like without widening that lens or deeper connection, or at least the stewardship of being in dialogue with someone that can help us deepen that understanding, it's so easy again to step into that individuation place where you feel like
Yeah.
you're alone.
You're a sick individual, and if you did something right and found the right resource, the things that bother you would go away. Not just that you would heal, become more whole, the things that bother you would go away. Then your relationships would be smooth and happy and sexual and pleasant and
Yeah.
compassionate and never hurtful. And your work would be meaningful and deep, and you would be very successful, and you would feel well in your body, and no matter how old you are, no matter how
Right.
you were born with missing something or a heart problem and all that, and you kind of like start to get this idealized human being
Yeah.
that kind of doesn't exist in a way.
No, and something that you talk about in your on your page is a very powerful question, and I wanted to ask you the powerful question, but here it is, and it's, what's it like to be you? And I think about all the ways we have misjudged or misconstrued an idea of someone based on the lens through which we're seeing the world without first putting ourselves in the shoes of whomever we're working with or we're judging. For example, a very depressed person asking this question, what's it like to be depressed? Because their experience of depression, as you say, might be different from someone else's description of depression.
Totally.
So I'm curious for you, where did this question come from, and how has it impacted your
Thank you for that. It's an amazing question. What's it like to be depressed? When you were talking about Catholic school, I remember a person I worked with who was really large and he wanted to lose weight. And he told me, I asked him about eating, what he liked the most. This is kind of a circuitous answer. Like, what kind of foods does he like? And he said, I like toast with butter on it. So I started thinking, that's fascinating. I'm like, let me ask you more questions. Like, what is this? Tell me more about this toast. Well, I like it like slightly brown, and I like the butter melting into the cracks, of that you can see in the toast. So it's not just wiped on top, so it's really melted and da da da. And he was telling me this story. I'm salivating. I'm like listening and tell. And as he was telling me the story, he started weeping. I said, "Why are you weeping?" And he said, "I was sent away to a Catholic school, a private school, away from my family, and kids teased me because I was big, fat, he would say, and I had no friends.
Hmm.
And the teachers were very rough with me." And he said, "And at night I would get up when no one was around, and I'd go to the kitchen and I'd make toast."
Mm.
Isn't that touching?
Yeah.
And he said that was my only friend, the toast.
Yeah.
And I was like, it makes me weep. And he's like, how can you say to that person, you really shouldn't eat so much toast. It's carbs and it's buttery. Obviously not good for you. You should stop. If you lose weight, if you didn't eat toast, it's like, but then you miss the story, right? It's like,
Yeah.
you kind of should go, your heart, as you and I are both getting teary. We both should be like, that's a beautiful story. And, beautiful meaning it's touching our hearts, the beauty,
Yeah.
the poignant beauty of that and the need for toast. And he's saying in a way, I still need it.
Hmm.
Need what? It doesn't have to be literal toast and butter.
Of course.
You need something melty and warm and yummy that's accessible to him in a world that's not terribly friendly inside of him. You're
Yeah.
weight, you're fat, you're this, you're that. It's as rough inside as him as it was in Catholic school, right? And it's as unfriendly as it was in Catholic school. And the world is not so friendly to him because he's big and round. So he's still living in that inner world and outer world, and he still needs some toast. And he's like, what should I do? And I said, the first thing, I should try to treat you more like I'm offering you warm buttered toast than clinical advice.
Yeah.
What can I do for you, my friend? How do I make our sessions together warmer and yummier for you?
Wow.
In other words, how can I be more like toast? Because you need toast.
Yeah.
I want to be more toast like. Do I touch your arm when you come in? Do I say sweet things to you? What is toast? How do I give you some of that? Because you need it.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know where that went, but what's it like to be you? What's it like to be you in a round body? Well, what's it like for that person is to be part of a story, a dramatic story, and part of a taste buds, and part of something he likes, and part of an eating pattern. That's what it's like to be him. And hating that eating pattern and
Yeah.
needing that eating pattern, that's part of what the world he lives in. And now I know a little bit about that person, and then we've been talking. And then I have a feeling connection with him. I'm not just like, here's the program, do this and this and this. And I'm like,
Right.
before we get on to that, is a feeling person. And now we have a warm, buttery connection. And that's, maybe he'll lose weight, maybe not. We'll do our best.
Yeah.
That's not only up to him or me, by the way, as much as people think it is. Life decides those things, how far a person
Right.
gets with those changes. Yeah.
Your example reminds me of a story Gabor Mate once shared about a drug addict who was addicted to heroin, and the addict was describing the heroin like a warm hug.
Mm,
And how often, like, I'm in Vancouver, BC, and like the downtown east side is one of the most drug prominent areas
mm,
of all of Canada and maybe even the world. I'm not sure about that
mm,
stat, so correct me if I'm wrong, but he always alludes to, like, it's not an addiction problem, it's an environmental systems problem.
yeah.
And yeah, it just really made me think of that story, how often we think we know about someone, but we don't,
Yeah.
you know?
Addictions are huge. What's that person hungry for? The warm hug in this case, freedom from the war. There's so many people who are on streets from heroin addictions and other addictions who've been vets, come back from war with psychological and physical wounds. So they're
Yeah.
turning to heroin as their toast. What does that mean? That's bad. They're self-medicating. But from what? And what are they looking for? Are they looking for the hug? Are they looking for understanding?
Hmm.
What are they? And we have to ask, right? If we can't just kind of go, you're an addict. Like, that's not going to get the information about them, or like you're saying, or the culture around them.
Yeah.
What do they need from me that I'm not giving? I'm not saying I'm to blame, but how is that? Because it's a cultural problem. Addiction is a cultural problem. Street people who have been on alcohol and drugs is a cultural problem, a community problem. That doesn't
Yeah.
mean I have to fix them. It means I'm part of that story.
Yeah. Something that you talk about is criticism and how
Mhm.
it's just a detriment to our whole being because it almost stifles the route and the
Yeah.
path through which we can understand each other
Mhm.
more. And something I really love that I've noticed throughout the weaving of our conversation is there's this emphasis of feeling and dialogue.
Yeah.
And you speak to this on your Instagram page about when you have a student come to you, you don't criticize them, you actually involve them in the experience of how they might be able to navigate something maybe they're having a hard time with more. And you keep them in the conversation, which I loved so much because there's two involved, two people having this experience. There's a humility of the teacher that might not know everything. And then there's the student who's coming and asking vulnerably, like, I might need help with this. And we can blast this out into a microcosm level as well. But I just think about some of the systems in schools where you get given feedback, whether it's a comment on a paper. It's been so long since I've been in that type of school, but you're almost alone in that processing. If you are someone that struggles with self judgment or criticism or self love, all of those different layers, it can be very, like, the word ostracizing comes to mind, but it's just like it emphasizes the fear I'm already coming with when I'm thinking I'm not smart enough to meet this requirement.
Yeah. Treating people by wanting to know what it's like to be them. And if we know how to make a deeper inquiry, then we need some skills in addition to asking the question.
Right.
I asked that man is the question of what it's like to be him. And I need some skills to help him connect with that story and unfold that story and make meaning at it. So the skills are necessary, but he will have the answer. He knows something I don't know. He knows toast. He knows the story, and he knows what it's like to have the toast,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether that's a hug, whether that's ability to melt, whether that's how warm that has to be, why the crunchiness. He knows, his body knows. I'm not saying he knows in his head, but he knows the answers to those questions. So I always treat people like they have the answer, and I know how to help them get to it. That's my
Mm-hmm.
skill. I have a mastery at that. I know how to ask him about the toast and whether it's darker and lighter and what kind of butter he's putting on it and why I'm asking him then how to have a somatic experience of that toast. I know how to do that, but then he's going to show me.
Mm.
And it's invariably different. It's always different when people think. Most people's thoughts about themselves are married with shame, so they can't tell the
Mm-hmm.
difference. I'm thinking of a woman. I showed the video of it when I was teaching the other day to a group in London. And she said, I have a problem I need help with because I was traumatized when I was young and I freeze. So people talk about trauma and freezing. Freezing is one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that people talk freezing, fawning. People talk about freezing as one of the things. So, and then some people say, oh, if you're freeze, you need to do this. Here's the protocol. Here's what to do. But
Right.
I begin by wanting to know what's it like to be you. I said, what's it like to freeze? Like she hasn't
Yeah.
been asked this. Like people are giving her answers, but they don't know. So
Right.
she says, I don't know. I said, can you allow your body to freeze and show me? So she
Mm.
puts her hands up, and people may not be able to see. She puts her hands up, and they curled up, and she looks like she's kind of wrapping up a little bit, and her hands are like in front of her, so she looks like
Mhm.
like a scared, childish kind of look with her hands curled up in front of her.
Yeah.
Go ahead and let yourself freeze more. Why more? Really let the freeze happen all the way. Don't hold it back. So as she does that, her hands start shaking. My hands are shaking. So now her hands are shaking a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
There's movement in that freeze. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that. I didn't know she was going to show me. Can you pay
Right.
attention to that movement and the shaking and let your hands shake a little more? Now her hands are shaking more. They're going back and forth. And it looks almost like her hands are going back and forth, almost like fists going back and forth.
Huh.
I said, keep going. Let your body move freely. The body intelligence is now moving. Let it move. And pretty soon she's like making these punching motions, like, and her
Yeah.
face looks like she wants to box somebody. And she's like, right? And she's doing this great thing and this great look on her face and her eyes and making these punching motions. And I
Wow.
said, oh, it's nice to meet you. You, the one with these hands that are punching and boxing and stuff like that. And I said, you could probably do something that person can do. Your normal self is more frozen, she's
Yeah.
called herself, but you are different. You're a boxing person. I said, what could you do that she couldn't do? This
Wow.
point of view. And she says, me, I don't freeze.
Mm.
Isn't that amazing? So
Yeah.
inside the freezing itself, I don't know what she's supposed to do. That I could say everyone who's frozen has anger in them. They should. Well, maybe they have terror in them. I don't know. Maybe they have need for toast. I don't know what's inside them. Right? I don't have a protocol. But her body says to me, inside this freeze is a little motion that you can't see. But if you inquire of me, I'll show it to you. She doesn't know it. Her body says, wow, somebody's interested. That takes 12 minutes. It doesn't take years. Now, it's going to take her years to say, you know what? I could freeze when you put me down, Jenny, but I could also put up a fist and say, don't mess with me. That's going to take her a while to be able to say that in public, to say that to somebody, right?
Yeah.
That's going to take a while. But the answer to the problem of freezing, we know what that answer is. She needs that part of her to be freed up, to be known. And I have to, like I said, she could have needed toast. She could have needed the warm hug. She could have needed the fight. She could have needed poetry. She could have needed the woods. We wouldn't know until we inquire. But she has a medicine, and there's no book that could tell me that answer.
Oh.
It has to be the person showing me the way.
That is so powerful. It just makes me think and feel, more importantly, into the stewardship of this work. Like everything you're saying is so profound. You have the medicine. That's something a book can't teach you. Theory cannot teach you what your body deep down knows.
Yeah.
And it just sounds like there's such a proponent of active engagement with what is, even when it's extremely uncomfortable, with the right support in place and the proper inquiries. And that just must be so life-changing, like even for you in your own work.
Yeah, always. Every time I've been doing that for 35 years consciously, and unconsciously I was always doing things with people, but I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have developed skills, right?
Yeah.
Which take years. Wanting to know what people are really like. And then when I see it, I'm always feeling like I'm with the divine,
Yeah.
I always feel like I'm in an incredible healing, not like me as the healer, but we did something together. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like who would have known that we were going to find the warm toast? Who were going to know that we were going to find the hug? Who know we were going to find the boxer?
The home.
And it's so, life is so pregnant right in the middle of those difficulties, right in the middle of the painful foot or the chronic exhaustion or the freezing or the gaining weight of that man. Right in the middle of those things, there's a kind of a pregnancy that needs to be midwifed. And that means somebody has to care for it. No, it may take months. It's not ready to come out yet. So we're not forcing it. We're not kind of trying to make a great empowerment moment out of everything.
Yeah.
We don't know, but we can hold it and care for it. And if we believe that there's something in there and that there is a birthing that wants to happen, then the atmosphere is good for people to start showing this thing, this healing thing, the wholeness of themselves. Very
Mm.
quickly, even people have been held back for long periods of time. 20, 30 minutes, people start
Mhm.
showing things that you never seen, I never seen, and they never saw about themselves
Yeah,
just because of someone saying, I want to know what it's like to be you, and then having some skills to make the inquiry.
I love that. I love the metaphor you used too about your midwifing and emergence of an aspect of himself that's just so big.
You're such a magnificent human being. I mean, just I am appreciating your intelligence. I hear the way you use your language and how articulate and clear
Thank
you are
you.
about your questions and your responses. You have a lot of eldership in you because you're supporting me. You know what I'm saying? That means eldership is not about age, meaning you
Yeah, no, I
I want to appreciate you and this kind of thing and see what you're doing and how you're doing it. And that's an eldership quality that sees another person and doesn't just say, hey, you're great, but offers a very specific vision of a person's beauty or gifts. So I see
mm,
that in you. And then your feeling intelligence, meaning not just your named feelings, but that you can bring your feelings forward and make that part of the teaching and understanding. So those are three things that you have wrapped together that makes a very exceptional human being.
David, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I'm so honored by your words and they are deeply received in my heart. I equally feel the same with you. And I was so nervous at the start of this. And now I feel like I was in deep conversation with a dear friend. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you. And we're at the top of the hour. And just for the last 3 minutes, I haven't even touched the brink of what I wanted to get into, which was the unshaming way and so much of your work. And maybe we could have a part two down the road. But I would love for you to share how people can find you. David has written 4 beautiful books. One of them is being in a response to Dr. Phil or something, which
Yeah. Talking back to Dr. Phil.
I love that. And then most recently, The Unshaming Way. So could you please share how people can connect more deeply with your work and just to get more into your inner scape? Because your wisdom is just, it is medicine in and of itself.
Thank you. By the way, well, everything we've been doing is about unshaming.
Yeah.
Not looking at a person as a broken, sick problem who needs to get things to go away, but a person who's got intelligence in them and then bringing it forward. So that's what
Mm,
we've been talking about with the toast and with the
the tears,
and with the
all.
tears and bringing the with the I don't know, let's make I don't know okay, bringing those forward. The unshaming way, you can get that anywhere that books are sold. Of course, Amazon. Not that I always love people to have to use Amazon, but without Amazon, a lot of books aren't sold. So I gotta it's very hard to sell a book. I'm not just telling me to make money, bring it into people's lives. Amazon is about covers about 50% of the books that get into the world. So but you can find it in libraries and other bookstores. The Unshaming Way. Gabor Mate wrote a review of my
Mhm.
book, and I was really honored by that. Speaking of, you know that I have an Instagram account under
Yeah.
David.Bedrick, and my last name is Bedrick, like bedrock with an
Mhm.
I. As a
Mhm.
kid, people call me Bedrock, and that was a good thing. That was like the cool names that people gave to us as kids, Bedrock,
Yeah.
David Bedrick, and so I always put videos up and things on Instagram, and then you can find things from me there.
And you have a website, I
I
believe.
have a website under davidbedrick.com. I'm pretty sure davidbedrick.com.
Okay.
The website there, or people can go to Instagram and find my website there. I teach regular courses. Sometimes it's like an hour and a half quick thing I'll do. Sometimes they're longer 3 hour classes or 6 week
Mhm.
classes. And then at the beginning of each year, I run 2 cohorts for like 10 months of teaching people skills. So those are not personal development, they're professional development. Do you want to learn somatic skills, parts work skills, drama skills for people who are coaches and therapists and healers who want to learn how to do an unshaming orientation to people. So that starts in February. So those are full now, and we don't add more, but you can apply now for next year. I
Amazing.
usually get a lot more applications than spots. So those are really special if people want to develop a level of mastery. I don't mean you're a master after 10 months, but a level of it enough so you kind of like I can enter a space as a healer, and not just because of a weekend or a few, but really very specific training.
Yeah, and we'll share all of those links in the show notes. And David, as we wrap up, I just want to say that this has been profound. And I mean, I'm always in honor of shepherding these conversations, but I feel like you shepherd me in a lot of ways, because there was a lot of breakdown as I broke open, and I could only do that in the safety of someone that can hold that so well. So I just appreciate you, my friend, and I look forward to being in conversation with you again in the future.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, David.
Making me very happy. I had a really nice day today.
Oh,
That's why I'm
good.
meaning hanging out with you.
Thank you. I did too.